Hi, I'm Vanessa Love. Uh, I'm at home. It's kind of my off time, but I'm thinking because it's what I do. Um, Art therapists aren't gonna like this video, and I'm hoping that by posting this that you become enlightened to what happens. And I think for the most part that I can say these things because I have basically not been a part of the art therapy community since I went through grad school. In grad school, I was kind of bullied by the professors, so I just never really became a part of the community. And so this is kind of the insider outsider look at this. So, one of the issues is that art therapists are terrible writers. They love case studies, which don't actually help anything. Um, because you can't take the situation and the directives that you use with one person and write that up and use them with everyone in that population. Let's say you have one person who's depressed and you decide to do a case study on them. The directives that you might use with that person may not be transferable or relatable to another depressed person. The other part of that is that there's no funding for full research. You can't get a grant from the American Art Therapy Association and do an experiment. Here's a group of people who were allowed to just, do artwork and didn't have a directive and didn't have an art therapist, and like directing them. These people were diagnosed with depression, and they were given these directives during these times during this week, and that's like, here's the comparison. That just doesn't happen. You can talk to people, you can say how art, like, talk to people and ask them questions like, how did artwork affect your life, affect your depression, and get them to give you answers, and then you can go ahead and whatchamacallit, like, analyze that, because there's no real it doesn't require much funding for that. But like, there's no money for experiments. There's very few art therapists out there anyway. And on top of that, there are very few art therapists making money off of being art therapists. There are people who wrote how to be an art therapist, introduction to art therapy, handbook of art therapy, art therapy. And those are required books for just about every art therapist. So every art therapist has these books. And some of the writers I like personally, I hate their writing. One of the writers, I had to write and research, and I hated her. She would bold her own writing to emphasize how important it was. I don't need that while I'm reading something. If I find something else important that you maybe didn't because of my filter and what I needed out of that situation, it's annoying. It's not like, here's a bold definition. Hey, here's, cognitive art therapy. This is what that means. That's not it at all. It's just like, I'm going to bold this because I find it important. And then all of these other things are pretty cool too. It's terrible. The American Art Therapy Association doesn't say where their money goes. And there's no transparency. As far as I know, there's no clear goals. And art therapists in general don't agree with each other about what art therapy is. So you can imagine that doing any sort of outreach or having a clear statement of what we want to do, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Everyone bickers with each other, which is like one of the worst things because we could be doing so much more. We can't because no one can agree. The American Art Therapy Association also doesn't give scholarships to students who want to attend their conferences. They don't give a student discount. If you go, you have to have the money to go. And they are quite expensive, especially when you're a student and you're already in debt. I would probably give to any organization that was like, hey, we have this fund set up so that if these 5 or 10 students needed assistance with coming to this conference, we'd allow for that. So, it's kind of like, where does the money go? I have some notes, so I'm like, that's, so skipping back to the writing, some of the people who write books for art therapy write edited editions. And what that is it's a bunch of articles from the American Art Therapy Journal like that kind of relate to one thing. So let's say it's like children's drawings. So they get a bunch of people who have written very specific articles on children's drawings and they get them together and put them in a book and money made. Very weird, and for me, very confusing because there's no continuity of the voice within each chapter. So if this chapter you're reading about, this book is great for if you want to do artwork and read children books about bullying, the next chapter might be about how to raise self-esteem of children by doing artwork. It can be very clinical or it can be very flowy and open and everything's great. That's kind of hard. It's difficult to read. All right. When you have to take classes for like just developing your art therapy, because that's what you gotta do if you have this licensure or this recognition of the field. You end up taking these classes that are like, or reading all these, things about, the old research was college students and self-esteem and making mandalas, which was at least interesting. Now the new movement is how yoga and art therapy work together. I'm not fucking doing yoga with my art therapy clients, just not doing it. I can encourage them to do yoga because there's much research behind the benefits of doing yoga. I'm not a yoga teacher. I'm not going to be a yoga teacher. I'm not going to teach people how to do yoga in the middle of their sessions. I don't have space for it. I don't have time for that. I don't want to hear about art therapy and yoga anymore. Like, it's not even development for my practice. It's just a bunch of people who want to market themselves better. Let's see. So one of the things that I find hilarious about art therapists is that all of them want you to do something that promotes art therapy. And I've been criticized for this because I do behind the scene things and I do actual things. I'm like, my opinion is that art therapy is filled with a lot of well-meaning white women, middle class, who may or may not have had much experience with people of color or people who are of lower SES. So, what is that? Social economic status. So, like, they want to help people who they feel comfortable helping. Just remember that. Okay. Okay. So they only want to do things that promote art therapy. And since I wasn't well liked by the teachers in grad school, I missed that brainwashing. So I don't really care. But art therapists police each other, and they exclude other helping and therapy fields. So, all right, here's my rant. I had a supervisor, and she only wants, like, she wants license protection for art therapists, and I guess there's, some, like, respect that I have for that. But at the same time, she is not a very welcoming or well-connected or friendly person. She's very, this is what I said, you do it. I can't believe you can't understand what I'm doing. Just do it. And when you have someone like that telling you not to do something, it kind of pisses you off. Kind of makes you want to be like, no. Go the fuck away. So, all right. I know that she meant this as just kind of an offhanded comment. So, I'm sitting there. I don't find her very, like, I couldn't connect with her, so, like, I can't imagine that other people connected well with her. So she comes in and she's like, oh, I just talked to a bunch of social workers, and I made sure to remind them not to do art therapy with their clients. I think that's a terrible way to go about this. She also watched me talk to a bunch of people, and she kind of, like, got in the way of me getting, doing what I was supposed to be doing for school. And it was weird because I was like, you guys are bickering and I'm in the middle and this sucks. I had to do what they call an experiential with a bunch of people. I had to find a group, do artwork, and then get feedback and leave. Okay? That's all that I had to do. She wouldn't allow me to do artwork with anyone who wasn't an art therapist. So this got in the way of my grade. Luckily, my professor was very nice, and she said, okay, well, since this person has an issue, I'm just going to adjust this for you, but this is going to hinder you, and it did. But, like, you can't, so I just talked about art therapy, which she stood there the entire time and made damn sure that I didn't do art with any of those people. I think that I'm friendly, I'm connected, I like being around people. And I like going and talking with people and doing art with them. And I think that, this is why I said in one of my last videos, art therapists aren't going to like this. Me encouraging people to be LCSWs and getting their credentials in art therapy. Because it's people like this who are like, you're not doing the best thing that you can do for art therapy. You're not doing what you can to get people to be art therapists. Which I think kind of translates to, you're not making me money. Which is a weird thing, because I can't understand why anyone would care if I'm doing or not doing for the art therapy community, but they're also not asking, which is a weird assumption to make. So, I think that if I went to a bunch of social workers and said, hey, I'm going to do art with you, I want to, like, prove to you, like, how beneficial art therapy is for you to do, that just them understanding, oh, this is what a client can feel like after doing therapy. Oh, okay. That's like the sweetness, right? So, let's say that I did that and a spot becomes open, in that community, and it's not an LCSW position. And they're like, hey, you did really great work with us. Why don't you come and, like, be an art therapist here? I think that that's way better than this woman being so intense and so against all of this stuff, and, like, she's one of those people that I'm like, she polices people. We've had arguments. I'm like, you're the one who taught me this shit. Like, how do you have an argument with one of your ex-students? Like, come on, seriously? but we've had arguments. Recently, what I had made a comment about, so Udemy, udemy.com. This is this policing shit that I'm like, fuck you all. They created a class that was called art therapy because they were teaching people how to draw. It was like a 5-hour course, very inexpensive, how to draw and get to some of their emotional places, which, that's great. Oh, wasn't done by an art therapist. Art therapists fucking blew that shit up. Oh, you can't call it that. You can't do that. This is illegal. You have to. I didn't go to school for 2 years extra just for you to say that this is our therapy training. Seriously. Filth. Okay. Even now with them calling it therapeutic art therapists, still, you have to find a group. You will be better off finding your own art therapist. Listen, I don't do groups. There's not an art therapy group in this area. There's not an art therapy group within like 50 miles, I'll say 20 miles. I think 50 miles might put you into the New Haven area and they might have a couple of groups. We don't have art therapy groups, okay? Like, it just doesn't, it's not a thing. And one of the comments that I made was, let's say that you could do an online art therapy class. Hey, we're going to get a bunch of, depressed people together and, check in and, do our, video chats and all that stuff and make artwork. Share our artwork. Come up with stuff to do, in between sessions. That's cool. If you advertise that on Facebook, again, this comes down to you're taking money away from us. How are you making sure that other people are getting money? Which is one of those weird things. Even if you did that, let's say you decide to do it and you're an art therapist. Oh, the art therapist police will get on you and they will make sure that you feel like complete shit and, an art therapist might actually make money off of this, right? Like, you can do this. What I can imagine them saying is you can't practice in another state without having a licensure in that state, which I disagree with because I'm like, you guys want money. That's it. Your state wants money. Like, I have such a problem with this. Like, why? Anyway. And then the other thing that they'll say is, well, you don't know what another person's, state of mind is. So let's say that you do this group and one of the participants just goes off the rails and they, they threaten suicide or, they go and they're just having an emotional breakdown. You can't do anything for them in another state. Okay, listen. That's like the whole screening process. Like, full well if you're an art therapist and you've been through all the classes about how to do art therapy, that eventually you had a group art therapy class, right? In that group art therapy class, they will talk to you about assessing people for the appropriateness of that group. An online group is never going to have someone who is that emotionally unstable, because you would screen them out within the first 15 minutes. Okay, you might dominate this group. Okay, you might, you've had, 2 suicide attempts in the last year. This group isn't for you. It's always this, a weird, you don't know what you're doing. Listen, if every art therapist has been through the same thing and has been through the trainings, and, has been through the after, the post-grad trainings, and all of that stuff, then how would they not know? So, like, it's this very weird, like, you don't know what you're doing. Yes, I do. Well, fuck. I don't know that, type of bullshit. And, like, this is, like, the issues with our therapist. Like, okay. So, the person who works with veterans. One of my issues is that it's a bunch of white women, right? It's a bunch of white women who haven't really dealt with too many people who are lower SES. Might not have really grew up in diversity, might not have a concept for these are the issues that this population goes through. These are the issues that this population goes through. These people won't come to you because of this cultural difference, blah, 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 blah. So they usually don't work with people that they don't really like working with. Some of them will work with the homeless. Some of them will work with inner city kids. But if they're telling you, oh, you got to do what you can to like really further the art therapy field, working with that type of clientele or in agencies isn't actually doing anything for art therapy, because like I think that that's what they think is the best thing, but that's not where a lot of these white women would want to work. It's not the populations they would do well with. It's not the populations they want. So, like that, I think that's their version of like, yeah, that's perpetuating. But my version is contact your representatives, contact the insurance companies, make sure that art therapy is covered, and like continue to be like, hey, art therapy is a recognized type of therapy. Contact your, representatives. I have met with my representative. I know, I knew him on a semi-professional, plane, because I had a Rotary lunch with him. So he knows what I do. He knows, he knows that I'm an art therapist. He understood art therapy immediately, which is wonderful. Ernie Hewitt, love him. So I talk to people, and this is what I do. But again, I was accused, because I don't talk about it, of not perpetuating art therapy and doing nothing for the field. Again, must come down to the bottom line of money. All right, well, hopefully that was informative for you. I will talk to you soon when I'm in a better mood. All right.